right, my name is Jonathan O'Brien, and I'll start by saying I have OCD, and not the fun, quirky kind where people like to keep things lined up or put the volume on an even number, but the real kind. And I think there's a lot of misperception about what OCD really is because of the way it's portrayed by the media, but it's really an anxiety disorder, and this anxiety can come in any number of ways. And for people with OCD, most people, it has nothing to do with washing your hands or checking doorknobs. When my OCD first got bad, I noticed that I was anxious about things I would normally be. The only difference is that the feeling just didn't go away. I felt like my stomach was in a constant knot. And because of this, I started to worry about the worry. I started reacting to it instead of just letting it be and searching frantically for something that would make it go away. But by desperately trying to get rid of the anxiety, I was really only making it worse and fueling the fire. So this is how I got started in the OCD cycle. So when something bothers you, your brain will automatically send you that thought. This is called ironic process theory. Basically, if you try not to think about something, you'll think about it. So this is how things become obsessions. They cause anxiety, and an action is performed to reduce the anxiety called a compulsion, which can be any action meant to reduce the anxiety. This brings some temporary relief, but in the long run, it just fuels the fire and the anxiety builds and builds and builds. So, caught in this cycle, it took only about 3 or 4 months for OCD and anxiety to completely take over my world. I wondered how my perception of the world could change so quickly from good to bad. It scared me, but at the same time, it awed me how powerful our brains are in influencing how we perceive the world. I learned that I could be in the exact same place or situation and perceive it in two completely different ways. And OCD was causing me to see the world in a much more fearful way than what I was okay with. I knew this had to change, and I knew I had to become an expert on how this part of the brain functions in order to help fix the problem. So, through countless hours of research, I finally understood what was going on in my mind. I learned that my brain was basically programmed into a state of fear by incorrectly reacting to the situations I was exposed to. The algorithm that decided what I should be afraid of and what I shouldn't was basically misclassifying things. And then I thought, programming, that sounds familiar. What do I know about programming and classification and algorithms? And I'll tell you right now, I'm no programmer, but I do have experience doing something called land cover classification, where you take a satellite image and you use an algorithm to decide what types of land cover are showing up in the image and then classify them accordingly. So I thought I started to see a connection here. So land cover classification starts with an image. So your job is to split this image into classes of land cover. So how you do this is you take samples of parts of the image called training samples and tell the computer what they are. So by doing this, you're training the algorithm to see pixels in a certain way. That way, if it sees a pixel that's a certain color, it'll calculate the statistical probability of it being a certain type of land cover. So in this image, you can see there are only two classes, vegetation or other. So if we compare this to the human brain classifying what it sees, we can think of the classes as scary and not scary. Think of the compulsion in OCD as a training sample, aka the thing that trains the algorithm. When you react with fear, you're training your algorithm to see the thing you reacted to as scary. Neurons that fire together wire together, and no matter how inert a stimulus, if you react to it with fear, that's the class it's going to go into. So what does this mean? It means that your reaction to any given situation, feeling, thought, etc., is what influences how you perceive it in the future, not how you feel. It also means that your brain can be programmed, and if it can be programmed, it can be reprogrammed. So to do this, you use something called ERP, where you're exposed to a stimulus that scares you, and then you react to it without fear. So to give you an example, he was really giving OCD the middle finger. So by understanding how the brain functions, I've learned how to properly react to my fears. And this, what you see here, is the proper reaction. So through effort, repetition, and willpower, I've given the middle finger to OCD and taken my life back. So if any of you listening today have OCD or anxiety, I want to tell you that there is hope for you. And just remember that what you do is more important than what you feel, because what you do today dictates how you feel tomorrow. And just because your brain was programmed in a certain way doesn't mean it can't be reprogrammed.